So, welcome, Elizabeth, to this conversation about co creating the third attractor.
Thank you so much, Daniela, for inviting me.
Yeah, I was really looking forward to talking to you. And my first question, and that's the only one that is prepared, is always: are you familiar with the term third attractor? And if yes, can you give us a little understanding in your words what it means?
Well, I know it a bit from the bit I know about complexity theory.
Hmm.
The third attractor is a state that arises out of a kind of bifurcation that leads to a new level of stability. It's I think it's often when there's a bifurcation point, and and that keeps kind of like a pendulum swinging back and forth, or there's a tension between the two, and something else
Yeah.
is able to arise between. But I also know that Daniel Schmachtenberg has made something of the third attractor, and I would imagine that that's the context that you're really speaking from.
Yeah, exactly. And it's probably very close to the first one that comes from complexity theory. I'm pretty sure he got it from there, because what he is making the point that the world right now seems to have two major attractors. One is going towards authoritarianism, and the other one going towards chaos against authoritarianism. And that many people lean towards one or the other, either towards authoritarianism, wanting somebody to guide us, to tell us where to go, how to proceed in the chaos of the world, or rejecting this authoritarian regime and pushing for anarchism, and probably more towards chaos. And he is making the point in these two talks where he speaks explicitly about the third attractor, that what we need to move forward in a better way, in a more hopeful way, is a third attractor. And that would be so attractive that people would kind of go with that third attractor and not elect an authoritarian dictator, or not go into chaos.
Mm.
And for me in this series, the question is very present: is it actually possible to co-create a third attractor, or does it have to arise from what is happening, from the chaos, from what we see that is not going too well? Or can we actively, with agency, do something to create a different path forward?
Is that a question?
That is a question.
Mhm.
That is my question, and I'm curious what you think.
I would say yes and no. That, and I'm saying yes and no to the question: can we co-create a a third attractor? And the the yes is that certainly what will arise will come from choices that we make, and no in the sense that we can't engineer this.
Mhm.
And it's interesting because they're always at points of crisis. Well, I guess that's been probably most of human history, has been a crisis for somebody at some place on this earth. But that that there are always those like Daniel who have a vision of how it could work, or a sense of like what's going on, or you have like someone like Teilhard de Chardin, who or Jean Gebser,
Mhm.
who or Sri Aurobindo,
Or Sri Aurobindo,
yeah, who could see some other possibility but their seeing it didn't make it happen.
Yeah.
And even with the most creative rationality, to be able to perceive, it's like people say all the time, we're living in or like what Eisenstein says, we're living in a culture of separation. The answer to that is, he says, interbeing, but what he means is connection. And it's like there's a way in which that's sort of undeniably so. It's like, yes, we would need something very different, not coming from a place of separation and division to start with. But there's no answer to how do we get there?
Mm.
And technical fixes won't get us there, I don't think. New systems of political organization, I don't think we'll get there. I think it has to start with our being available to the intelligence that has made us, to be able to move to a next step. But and that's the yes part, that the yes is about being willing to let go of our ideas of how the future should be, in order that the future that could be is able to work through us.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I would then ask all of us, you and me and everybody, how or what is catalyzing our ability to be more available? And I'm not pointing to strategizing or having a strategy to get there, but in the end, it is a question: how can more people become aware how important it is to make themselves available for spirit to come through more unrestricted?
I don't know that I mean, it's interesting. That ends up being a PR campaign. And that can't be the answer either.
Mm-hmm.
How do we get others to get that this is what has to happen? Yeah. And I think it's more about I think a humility in the face of the crises that we're in, a confrontation with not knowing how we're going to proceed, and an incredible care for life. And I think that there are going to be people who resonate with that or are seeking that, and there are those who are for a variety of reasons, a lot of it being trauma, who will want a quick solution, or something that will fix it, something that will make it better. If you look at like past choice points in Western cultural history, the love is a big part of it. It seems that opening, that the Christians, or the pre-Christian world, was the Iron Age. It was incredibly violent. It gave rise to empires that were merciless with other human beings. It was a desperate time where people were suffering enormously, and out of that grew Christian agape,
Mm.
the direct transmission of of a love that cared for humanity, a love that saw its purpose as aligning with what was called God, and being willing to sacrifice in order for your community, other human beings, to survive. As the young senatorial candidate in Texas, James Tallarico, says, the Christ or Jesus in the Bible spends most of his time not speaking, not lecturing, not creating community, but healing the sick.
Mhm.
It's this kind of agapic love for others, aligned with an absolute principle, an absolute love. That love transformed something, and that love was unstoppable. It was so against the Roman cultural context, and it came through the persons of women and slaves, and it they were fearless. I mean, the stories of the early Christians being persecuted, and their response, because they were so God intoxicated, it was love.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that love enabled them to withstand and bear and triumph over their persecution. And there are other moments in history. I think the modern era would not have existed without romantic love. That was a huge cultural shift, a shift between having your life, your sexual partner who would give you heirs, or through whom
Mhm.
your lineage would continue, that that instead of this being an economic and social compact, that the currency was love. That was, while, I mean, people often say, but there was, there was romantic love before, but it's not this the kind of combination of identity, social class, and sexuality, kind of wrapped up in what romantic love is about, didn't exist before the modern era, the early modern era.
Mhm.
So, and I think right now, as modernity is collapsing, that romantic love is what people have to hang on to. That's all they've got. And I think it's 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 not a love big enough for the circumstances that we're in.
Yeah.
It's a love that is personalized, that is individualized, that is, of course, eroticized, but it's way too small to to open to the possibilities that the future needs to consist of. Because when we're talking
Mhm.
about that, instead of a world of separation, we're talking about a world of connection. Connection,
Yeah.
unity, is the human experience of that is love. And the question is, how can we, what kinds of new love are out there
Mhm.
that are wanting to be realized and that are waiting to be opened up.
Mhm. And this is beautiful. I- Is your inner position then one of just trusting that this is in the end coming through, that it like in the positivity of everything that is unfolding, and that it will show by obviously by living it yourself, but also that it will show in a wider way. I think my question goes in the direction, I know that you are producing a quarterly magazine, you are very active in culture, in intersubjective dialogue, that you have a lot of your work, and the work of your group is considered uh, a new way of coming together, a step, a cultural step towards something new,
Mm-hmm.
that would be a testament to what you just described,
Mm-hmm.
that to showcase that you can come together in this way, and you can bring this love in a broader environment. So I think where I'm not totally clear is what your position is in terms of being active towards that goal, and at the same time surrender to what wants to happen.
I think that I feel a responsibility to do everything I can,
Yeah.
but I don't. But if you look at how romantic love took off in early modernity, and it took off through new technology, the books. There were books written about this, stories that were told that about romantic love that shifted the narrative that had been in culture for, I guess 1,000 years or so.
Mhm.
And it's or the way, if you read the testimony or the experience of early Christian converts, they talk about a fire, a fire raging, that something came through them, and they saw in a completely different way. They were able they all of a sudden, and what, as I think it was Justin, I don't know, I can't remember his name, that instead, that the old Roman deities, he saw them very clearly as demons.
Mm.
It's like, this is not good. This is bad, and this is what I've been worshiping or paying homage to or respect to all my life. But it was like it was a conversion experience. There was a fire to it, and the way early modern culture flipped to embrace the romance narrative was so seamless that we think that this is natural, and this is the way it always has been. So my sense of how this will work is by contagion.
Mm.
And I don't know, it's like in an emergent dialogue where we're opening the field of interbeing, and opening this our recognition, or what opens is our recognition that the ground that we're standing on is love. But it's not
Mhm.
romantic love, and it's not a simply God intoxicated love. It's a care, a love that is transcendent of the persons in the dialogue context, but it's also very human and very much oriented towards care.
Yeah.
But the contagion aspect of this is really important, because it's not someone making something happen. It's about people getting touched by something and having, and this is actually this is fairly rare, having the capacity to perceive that this is really, that there is a significance to this. It's not simply an individual experience. And I think that that's one of the conundrums of this work, is that you can't, people can have extraordinary experiences, but the individualistic paradigm and the paradigm of separation is so strong that even while people recognize that this was unique or remarkable or, great, let's do it again, that the implications of it and the sacrifice and surrender that's involved is not something that they're willing to engage with yet.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I do wonder if, as the temperature gets turned up politically, economically, socially on this planet, because I mean, if you listen to John Vervaeke and his analysis of the meaning crisis is having no roots in something larger than yourself.
Yeah.
And the need for that, the hunger for that, is driving a lot of crazy things, like really retrograde notions of Orthodox religion, and I don't mean that orthodoxy is a problem. Orthodox Christianity, for example, is incredibly beautiful, but when it's taken up as a way of holding on to something that you already that you know, and that gives you an identity that is fixed, and that moves you into a kind of polarity, that it's not a positive move.
Yeah. Yeah. I resonate a lot with the contagiousness that you are describing, and it's interesting. My little book that I wrote is actually a description of exactly that, how this opening, this being available to something bigger is contagious, and nobody can do it, can make it. It has to consume you, it has to grab you, it has to, yeah, it is contagious. So, but for something to be contagious, would you agree that it needs pockets of concentrated work, practice, uh, witnessing of what is possible, from where it then could spread? Like a disease that is contagious has somewhere a core and then goes out, yeah, and infects. So my sense is that contagiousness of this kind of a new worldview, a new way of coming together, a new way of seeing human connection and connection with nature, not just between humans, also needs this pockets of concentrated, I don't even know how to call it, concentrated.
intent.
practice and intent. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I would say practice, because I think that
Yeah.
that's where we're. I mean, who was it? Hubert Dreyfus, I think, has a term called background practices,
Oh,
and
yeah.
background practices are the practices that have become invisible to us, like the practice of being an individual, the practice of self-referencing, one, constantly,
Yeah.
the practice of energetically taking things into yourself
Hmm.
and reflecting on them in your own psyche. Those are practices that create the world that we're in right now, or certain corners of it. But so we need practices that will be the background practices of this
Yeah.
emergence. But
Yeah.
it's
Wh- Where would you draw the, I just want to go into this point. Where would you draw the line between these background practices and conditionings? Or is it similar?
uh conditioning ends up being individualistic. You're conditioned by your culture. It ends
Yeah.
up focusing on the individual as the point of problem or issue. You it's your conditioning that's in the way of your becoming free. And background practices refers to the entire sort of system. I don't mean it in a systemic kind of way, but that it refers to something that is bigger than any one person. They're practices that we all do.
Yeah.
We're all engaged in the practice of individualism. We're all engaged in the practices of separation. These background practices, we don't see them. We see that it's what we see as normal. It's what we see
Yeah. Yeah.
as as the way things should be. Yeah, and I think that if we're lucky, I think that we will. There will be. I mean, let me jump to something else. The book, the book by Graeber and Wenrow,
Yeah.
about the dawn of everything. I mean,
Yeah.
what what I found fascinating about the book was how they were charting that at early stages of human development there were radical experiments going on everywhere, and experiments with how you live, how you have how you set up community, how you come together. I mean that they were fascinating experiments with governance and participation, and yeah, things that were much more communistic, things that were much more, autocratic, sometimes in the same cultural context that they would flip. I think everyone was excited
Well,
by
flip
that.
seasonally. Yeah.
Yeah, seasonally go from
Yeah.
authoritarian
Exactly.
to more communal. But I think that's I think in some ways with the level of dysfunction that looks like we're going to be experiencing, I think that what is going to happen is that there will be a lot of experimentation in small groups,
Hmm.
and many of those groups will be motivated by wanting to create a different kind of coming together.
Yeah.
And I mean, what I've seen in the last 30 years of working with this with intersubjectivity or interbeing, as we prefer to call it now, is that it seems that the further we go, the more easily people are able to catch it. The more easily people are able to move into a space of interbeing, which is positive and in some ways negative, because if it's something that you value but is easy to access, you tend to think, I can do this anytime, and I don't want to do it right now, because it does
Yeah.
still require something from me that is about letting go of my own agenda, letting go of my 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 own ego motives,
Yeah.
if you want to call it that. But it's being more easily accessed in a certain quarter or corner of society. It's
Yeah.
obviously not everywhere by any means. Others are going back to more traditional forms of community, ones that have real gender hierarchy, ones that are more rule driven, more that look like the great again from the past that ran into its own limitations. It's like trying to bring that back is not going to be the answer.
Mm.
But creating incubators for a consciousness that shows us that it's possible to maintain one's uniqueness as an individual and actually come together in interbeing and allow it to work through us as a collective,
Mm.
allow something to be birthed between us as as groups of human beings, and work and be worked by and work with that intelligence, that will create some traction in the field of consciousness for a different pathway forward. That's my hope.
Yes, I totally share this hope, and I also very much agree with your observation that it's in a way easier accessible, and there is a danger that it's being seen as a, yeah, as a practice, but not as a practice for life itself, but as a practice that is beautiful to access. It's something uplifting, yeah, like
Yeah.
interbeing dialogues, as you do it, as we do it, is something that can uplift, that is a breeze in a heavy week of work and stress in your daily life. And I've I find it challenging sometimes to see a pathway to a kind of to a community building where this is the ground in which you meet, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and not just a small group of people, but that you really can expand this circle to a bigger group that could showcase an actual different way of being together, working together, taking decisions together, and make it very tangible, and not just almost like a psychedelic experience
Mm-hmm.
where you go in and out, and then you continue your life.
Yeah. I think that's the difference between being, again, I think it's between kind of an individualistic relationship to it versus
Yeah.
a maybe a more emergent developmental recognition that this is that, that there are implications to this that are much bigger than yourself.
Yeah. And it's also, I find it's also the difference between giving and taking, like this
Mm-hmm.
basic position of I take this for myself and for my well-being,
Yeah,
versus the giving yourself, you should call it surrender, giving yourself into the field fully,
yeah,
and then see what can be contributed.
yeah. I mean that there's we live in a culture of consumption,
Yeah.
and the the constant feeding of oneself on every level, emotionally, psychologically, attention wise,
Hmm.
materially, is what we're trained to do. And to flip that, really flip that so that we're energetically outward, that
Yeah.
we're in the field, we are the field, that the self is a gateway to interbeing,
Hmm.
to something that's beyond the self, rather
Yeah.
than the self being a self-contained kind of capsule.
Hmm. So
I guess going
yeah.
back to your
Yeah.
question, I guess it's like I see that it's my responsibility to do everything that I can do, and working with a committed group of people who are committed to seeing how far this can go in with who we are right now, and yeah, and trying to communicate this as best I can, as
Hmm.
as in different modes, and then I don't know from there.
Hmm.
And I do, looking at the well, there was a book, oh, what was it called? There was a book about evolution written by, I think, a Washington Post columnist, or no, journalist, and he kind of looked at all these choice points in human history where things could
Hmm.
have gotten very derailed, and what he said is, it's interesting, humans seem to muddle through, and so I don't know, I don't know how this will turn out. You know, stars that are born with without spiral arms, they die. You know,
Hmm.
if the human experiment is fizzes out, that would be a tragic thing, I think, in the cosmos. I think it, but I don't, I cannot make something happen that is not organic to this emergence itself.
Yeah.
And that means I do the best I can, and I give as much as as much as I can, and try to be what it is that I'm pointing to, and and then and then place my trust in the life process itself. That the
Yeah.
eye was developed in 4 or 5 different places before the eye was formed, the eyeball.
Hmm. Hmm.
That there are all these examples of things that just missed and worked out because life will life. It
Yeah.
lives.
Yes.
And there is a next step needed from us, a step beyond beyond our self-preoccupation. And I think people are going to find that they want to step beyond self-preoccupation because something urgent is happening on this planet. And I think that there will be further polarity, but not the polarity that we spoke about at the beginning, but more of a polarity of all of those who are trying to fix or repair or attack or whatever on one side, and then there will be a small group of humans, I think, and hopefully growing group of humans who say, no, 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 we have to find some way where we are together. And I mean, in his own way, Bernie Sanders is trying to do that.
Hmm.
You know, he's saying, you know, it's not left and right that divides us. I mean, he's pointing to somebody else, so he's polarizing there, but so be it. But people saying, I realize that we share more than we're different. But this at an existential level,
Yeah.
in facing into what will be an increasingly unknown situation, and people looking for a way to meet that from something more deeply authentic, more deeply existential.
Yeah. Yeah. The question that arises for me at this point is, normally when people are under pressure, they are not the most open to open up to this kind of togetherness. No, it's more natural to pull back into your smaller self or into more tribal or nation thinking than to open up to something much bigger and to more.
I think it depends because people say, like, for example, the hurricane in New Orleans, or these different communities that are being ongoingly barraged by more and more extreme weather. That the kind of pulling together that happens there,
Hmm.
it's almost like it's similar to what people say about being in the military and being in combat.
Yeah.
That there's some way it's like under this pressure that it's like this person is your life, the person next to you. You will live or die on whether or not the person next to you is safe, is okay.
Hmm.
And that I can't remember who I interviewed, but who made this point, and said that this is innately human, this kind of responsive care when others are in trouble. So there very well could be a very different response than what we expect. And it reminds me of something. There was Lord of the Flies is something that has been imprinted on at least Americans. I think the British. I don't know if it's read in other countries.
I I have heard of it, but
Yeah, it's about a group of schoolboys between the ages of, I guess, 8 and 15 who are stranded on an island and
yeah.
and end up like basically murdering each other or murdering a boy.
Yeah.
Some kind of horrible vision of what of yeah of young male violence. That this is our nature. You take everything
Mhm.
away and you put them on an island, and this is what happens. Well, apparently that did happen fairly recently. That there was a boat that was stranded, and the boys were and they took care of each other beautifully.
Yeah.
You know, it's like we're fed stories about
Yeah. Yeah.
how how horrible we are at core, and yet times of disaster, in times of when people need help. I mean, right now, because my partner just died, the neighbor's catty corner, who Thomas used to, he used to look after the mother that was there and just make sure she was okay and so forth. And so her
Hmm.
daughter has moved into the house, and they come over and say, anything you need at any time of the night,
Mm,
we're here. You know,
beautiful.
it's people know that yeah, that I and we here have been going through something profound, and they jump to help. And
Mhm.
I think that is who we are as human beings. And of course not all of us, and in none of us is it 100%.
Mhm.
But I think we should give ourselves a chance.
Yes, absolutely. Let me ask you an obvious question that I have to ask. How do you see the role of the emergence of AI in all of this? Because there is so much different views, hopes, fears that come up when it comes to AI, that it's part of the reality that we are in. And I'm just curious where you are at.
I don't know. I mean, I see it as an incredible social disruptor, but I also am aware that people are. I mean, I just saw a, something on YouTube. Just saw the title that the AI bubble is going to burst, meaning like the promise and all that was touted that it was going to happen so immediately is is not happening. But I'll tell you what concerns me, and it's something that Zach Stein brought up, and that is that, Elon Musk apparently is kind of jumping into this, that creating perfect mates,
Yeah,
best
yeah,
friends, best
yeah,
friends, this kind of thing, I think is incredibly dangerous.
yeah.
It's quite scary.
This is very scary for me too. And I already see people that I know personally that kind of post on social media or wherever their interaction with ChatGPT as if this was an interaction with a human being and as
Uh-huh.
if this was like what was like the reality to document, like in the sense of, because when I say Elizabeth said this, that, and the other thing, that has to do with a human connection, yeah. But when
Yeah.
you say ChatGPT said,
Yeah.
it's just weird.
Well,
And
yeah.
at the same time, I must also admit I'm also fascinated by what the LLMs can do and what you can do with it. But the moment when it gets personalized, when it gets a partner that is not complicated, that lets you get away with everything, and because that's what these chatbot partners are. They are very on your side, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Mm.
it's very dangerous, I agree.
Yeah.
And especially also for teenagers. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, there are already so many stories of young boys and girls who turn to these artificial bots instead of having a real human connection.
Right. And which means that they're not going to be able to deal with difference or conflict, or
Yeah.
because they're always going to be there's going to be somebody perfect there who listens, who cares about you. I mean, it's fascinating. I've had the experience over the last 2.5 years of working with, I don't remember, when did ChatGPT come out? It was a couple years ago.
Yeah, 2 years ago, probably. It's 2,
Yeah.
2.0 yeah.
Yeah. Um, but I would search on chat for medical information to because of Thomas's brain tumor, and then I would deal with the medical establishment. And there was one point where Thomas had progression of his cancer, and he had been in a clinical trial for a drug that they thought might have some be helpful or
Hmm.
be a game changer. And as soon as he had progression, he was kicked out of the study because it's like, well, it's not working.
Hmm.
And the nurse who was in charge of the study said, "Oh, sorry." She may not even have said that she was sorry, but it was like, you'll bring the rest of the medication back, won't you? I typed something into chat, and always giving context. This is what's going on. Da da da. And chat comes back, and says, "I'm so sorry to hear this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so sorry to hear this. This must be really difficult for you." You
Mm.
know, it showed far more empathy
Yeah, yeah,
than the humans who were supposed to be taking care of my partner.
yeah, yeah,
So I mean, they're it's scary how well they're trained.
yeah, yeah, and they are trained to lean towards agreeing with you, and
Mhm.
that's a very dangerous path in a world where we already are so self-absorbed and think we are right. Yeah, when
Right.
you then interact with an AI companion that confirms everything that you're saying, probably adds a little bit this, that, or the other thing, gives you some input, but basically agrees with your assumptions and
Yeah,
your thinking.
I read the story of a young woman. She wasn't a teenager, but maybe in her 20s somehow, and her chatbot friend helped her write her suicide note.
Yeah, yeah,
And the chatbot um, didn't have doesn't have any way to contact the parents or
yeah.
somebody can say this is not a good idea, but there's no real world action that they can take to really help.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I don't. I mean, I heard recently that people who are creating alternative chatbots are running into trouble because the tech companies have so much money and so much invested in research that they can destroy the platform that your experiment is built on, like with an update, and you don't have the resources to be able to keep up with it. So
Yeah, yeah.
people who are trying to influence the LLMs by creating different loci of engagement, ways of perceiving, etc., are realizing that they're going to be constantly running behind.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm not so sure. I mean, the sheer fact that so many different fractions can create their own LLMs is in itself already a problem, no? Or a challenge for us, because all the doctrines and ideologies can go into these bots that then can reiterate them very skillfully.
Yeah,
So on one hand, yeah, you could probably make better ones, but you can also go to the other side. You can make more extreme ones. And I recently had a conversation with somebody that more than one actually, that felt strongly that a benevolent AI could probably be a way out to
mm,
for as a savior, which is, for me, that's a very creepy idea, because on one hand it goes again towards the one savior that would save us all, yeah,
It's a different
and also
form of authoritarianism.
absolutely, yeah, it totally is. A benevolent dictator is still a but these ideas are out there, and I have heard these ideas of the benevolent AI that could actually guide the way and would have more insights in what would need to happen than we have, and could actually guide us, is out there as a strong opinion. And that's for me another scary part.
Well, it'll be interesting to see the narratives that emerge out of uh, Gen Z.
Mm,
It is, yeah, where will they see this as I mean, they will grow up with this. This will be warm to them rather than cold, meaning
yeah,
something that feels alive and that is connected. When you grow up in the technology, you imbue it with your own with your
yeah, yeah.
own warmth. And
Hmm.
yeah, we'll see. I mean, I don't know. I think the next, I don't really have a prediction. I know we've got like the resources of this planet that are being committed to this are extraordinary.
Yeah,
It's enormous. And then the gullibility of the human species is on display right now in
yeah,
terms of the kinds of things that people believe because they saw it on social media.
yeah. Yeah, it's terrible. Like in the last 6 months, the media landscape has changed so much with all the fake videos and the AI videos and messages. It's crazy. It feels like it kind of has to explode, because this cannot go on like this, because it's so artificial. It's like it has become meaningless. It's almost ironically meaningless what is out there.
Yeah, and I think that may do it in.
Yeah, it may.
People go, I don't want to, I don't want to, I mean, I don't know that there have been groups of teenagers in different schools around the US who don't have phones, don't want phones.
Yeah,
They're reading books. They're saying there's something wrong here. I want human contact.
yeah, yeah. That would be a good movement. But then sometimes a little bit, I'm also think I live here in a village in India,
Mm.
like really rural village. And then I'm thinking these guys have still so very different problems and challenges, like the way women are treated here, the family systems that
Yeah.
are really, really difficult. The the men that are, I'm talking village, and I'm not talking all of India, and I mean
Yeah.
India is so diverse, but the village life here, which is tribal, like in the West, probably 200 years ago or 300 years ago, it's such a difficult life. And
Mm.
that's also part of our planet, no? It's like,
Mm.
and they have smartphones, and they live this difficult life, and they have the arranged marriages. The thing with the love is not yet
Yeah.
mainstream here.
Yeah. Right.
It's
Right.
it sometimes I feel like it's so overwhelming to see the bandwidth
Mm.
of different challenges that we actually are facing as a humanity, as the planet, as nature,
Yeah.
as consciousness.
Yeah. I think we're probably going to have a very painful reboot.
Yeah, yeah. And that interestingly and sadly, this is kind of, I think, our conversation is probably the 15th now that I am having, and there is one insight that comes in almost all of the conversations, that it probably has to get worse before it can get better.
Mhm.
That we will probably have to crash to then come together in a different way.
Yeah, because I mean, it's fascinating to see how things like the impact of global warming, or however you want to call it, climate collapse, how that creates migration problems, that the migration problems create domestic problems, that
Mhm.
how these are all interrelated, but most people only see the part of the problem that is in front of their face or walking down their street,
Yeah, yeah,
and there isn't a way, like like uh, a colleague of mine says that his parents are, upset, just very upset about the migrants coming through.
yeah,
And when he tries to explain the interconnectedness of these things, they kind of blank out. It's like
yeah, yeah,
they're not capable really of holding it, and it's not what hits them.
yeah,
So that's, yeah, it's hard.
yeah, yeah. It is very hard. Do you see any significant movement in a good direction in education in schools? Or do you have any
I,
sense? Because in the end, it would need to start in education. Whatever should change, it would be ideal to have it changed in schools with kids, no?
yeah, I would have to start with kids, but well, it's interesting. I think it actually starts with adults,
Yeah, yeah, sure.
because adults are raising the kids.
Yeah,
And I also don't think that institutional schools, in the context that we have them now, will ever meet the needs of what we're facing right now.
yeah,
But I mean, of course, there are certain schools that are doing a beautiful job, but it's certainly not system wide.
mhm,
And and I think also part of the problem is that teachers have knowledge from 30 years ago, which is what they're teaching, and the students can go on ChatGPT and get, find out whatever
get the
they
news
yeah.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. It doesn't make any sense anymore. The whole system is, yeah. There is a. I once had a kind of an explosive vision inside an intersubjective dialogue that we had in a group years ago. A group that came together regularly and did the interbeing work, how you call it now. And we were sitting in a cafe, actually, that group, and we're talking. And then we had this inspiration that in the future kids should grow up in this interbeing holons or
Mm.
groups, or and that this would be the context in which you grow up, not like in relationship to your parents just, but in this interbeing
Field.
groups that would feel from the beginning, from baby, from toddler. And I still feel so much resonance with this idea,
Mm.
that this would be so beautiful, because it would lay a totally different ground of our self boundaries, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's
I would
probably for
imagine.
another lifetime.
Yeah, it's like how you would set that up. Uh, yeah, but
Yeah, yeah, no,
probably a few
there is
lifetimes.
not a little bit of thought through. It's just like more like an intuition of something that could at one
Yeah,
point happen.
But I think you're onto something that we're interbeing the ground between us as separation is now, or individualism is now.
Yeah,
If it were the ground between us, it would change the way that we do basically pretty much everything.
yeah, exactly.
And
And if you would grow up in this, you could actually have this background practices would then be different, no?
yes, the background practice would be about interbeing,
Yeah,
would be assuming that, not
yeah,
not as an idea, but as a lived, a,
yeah,
a the way life works, the way it's normal.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, great. Is there anything you would like to bring in from your side into the whole topic, or
I think the one thing that's on my mind, and it's is about humility, is about the importance, the power of humility, that really not being so sure of ourselves. And I don't
Mhm,
mean being kind of stupidly insecure. It's not about being insecure at all, but it's really about letting go of a lot of our presuppositions,
mhm,
and our sense that we can fix things. And it doesn't make that doesn't absolve us of being responsible, but for life, for our relationships, for the way, for what's happening in our immediate and larger context. But the attitude of humility,
mhm.
and that brings with it a curiosity,
Yeah,
a real curiosity and a not knowing, that is generative and fertile, I think is terrifically important at this point,
mhm,
because the instinct of the human mind to grab things and figure it out and get it all lined up, and I don't think that emergence works that way.
mhm.
And emergence is the way the universe creates.
Yeah, yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that's the position that we can take, and the rest is we will see.
Yeah, and I think there's a pressure that one, or a kind of intensity that one has to live with and be willing to live with, in feeling desperate about the situation, feeling like, oh, I've got to do something,
Mhm,
and and recognizing that anything that would come from that part of oneself that feels that it can conquer and fix it, make it better, or find a way out, that and the fact that you actually don't know, I think there's a tension there that one has to live with.
yeah,
And I think that that's part of what maturity is at this point, and particularly spiritual maturity.
mhm,
And that means that one needs to become interested in that which one doesn't know, and that which is new or different in one's experience, and in one's relationships, to begin to become interested in the things that that you would ordinarily kind of bat out of the way because they don't fit with your assumptions.
Yeah, yeah.
Because somehow we have to let something new live on this planet through us.
Yeah.
And that newness is not something we can make up. It's not a new form of AI.
No. No, it literally has to emerge from our openness to it, from our allowing it to show its contours, hopefully.
And part of its contours is that we have to do this together. It's not something, it's not
Yeah.
a solo
No,
flight.
no, it's not. Thank you, Elizabeth.
You're welcome, Daniela. Yeah, thank you.